Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Good morning. My name is Ron Strobel. I'm the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Catherine Sines.
Good morning, Rotarians. Good morning. I had the honor of attending a memorial service Sunday morning, which Jimmy Sefton was honored, and Mike Johns Sr. read this poem, and I wanted to share it with all of you. An old man going a lone highway came in the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast, deep, and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fears for him. But he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are wasting strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again must pass this way. You must cross the chasm deep and wide. Why build you the bridge at the eventide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said, there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been taught not to me, to the fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building the bridge for him. And as he said that, he said, think about the people who have passed, Jimmy, to me, and he built a bridge for each one of us so that we can have it easier. And we need to do the same. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. To lead us in the pledge and four-way test, David Ash.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the four-way test of the things we think they are due. First, is it true? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, David. And lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
I don't have any special words available today. Jim's Field's out of town. So we're going to sing America, My Country 'Tis of Thee. Here we go. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Okay.
Thank you, Dick. And now our president, Joe Avella.
Thank you, Ron. We have a few guests. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We do have a few guests this morning. I'd like our Assistant Secretary, Joe Zapatowski, to introduce them.
Thank you, Joe. Today we have Lonnie Banner and Jamie Cosman from the high school with their great students. Say hi to them. And we have a visitor from the Akron Club, Jim Redmond. Jim? Good morning, everybody. That takes care of that. Thank you.
Catherine mentioned that memorial service. That was the final event of the Rotary District Conference held this past weekend, and so I thank Catherine for being there. I left on your table for some of you a copy of the program from that conference. It was very well attended. Probably 200 people there, 200 plus people there for Saturday evening dinner and Friday night's dinner. All the Rotaract and Interact students were there. Our Rotary Youth Exchange students were there. They had a full day session. So it was a great conference, and I invite you to take a look at this. And Monica Robbins was there as the guest MC. She's from Channel 5, and she was there as the guest MC. So Channel 3. Okay. So in any case, take a look at this. So the next, the gala. Let's talk about the gala. Ron, Gail, Evan.
While Evan's getting ready to get up here, and talk about the financial side of it, the thing we need now is people in chairs. So ticket sales are very important. We'd really like to get 250, 275 people in that room. We've had it most years in the past. Last year we were down at 220, so this year please bring more of your friends than you have in the past. If everybody brought 2 other couples, we'd have the room packed. So please, in the next week and a half, get out and sell tickets, and hopefully bring all of them next week so we know who all's going to be there.
Good morning, Rotarians. Okay, I'm going for 300.
Okay.
So that's the capacity of the dining room, the ballroom at the Hilton Garden Inn. So come on, guys, we got to do it. We need to get people there. Our wonderful gifts are meaningless if we don't have bidders there. So please make a big concerted effort. I know I'm begging, but we can do it. Thank you.
So the wonderful gifts that Gail mentioned, just a quick update. I know I've talked with you a lot about gifts. We're over $70,000 in gifts and donations, and we have some wonderful packages from trips to toothbrushes. So come one, come all, invite your friends and your family, and we'll see you on May 13th for a great event.
Okay, thank you, team. Next, I think next we'll have our 3-minute Rotarian, which this week is Roseanne Drake.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Okay, I will definitely keep this 3 minutes or under, hopefully. Well, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. Went off to college, met my husband, Joe. He swept me off my feet. I quit school, got married. He was in the Army, so we moved off to, he was stationed at Fort Myer right near Washington, D.C., so we lived in a furnished apartment until his years of service were over. Moved back to Pittsburgh. We have 2 sons, so we were raising our family. Then we moved, he was transferred to Chicago. We lived there in Chicagoland for 4 years. And we always wanted to get back to Pittsburgh because that's home. Joe was able to convince the company to move him to Cleveland. That was as close as we could get. So before finding a home, we decided our older son was getting ready to enter high school at that time. And so we looked for a school first. And we found Walsh Jesuit. And then we looked for a home. And that's how we found Hudson. And we sure are glad that we did. But I don't have to tell any of you that. You know, Hudson is a great place to raise a family and to live. Joe had to travel quite a lot, so I just jumped into volunteering at Walsh Jesuit to get to meet people and to help out at the school. And I guess I was around there quite a bit, and so they finally decided to offer me a job. So I became the auction coordinator running their gala called Powwow. So I did that for about 18 years, and I had the opportunity while I was at Walsh Jesuit to go back to school because I always regretted quitting and not completing my degree. So in 2004, I graduated from Kent State University with a degree in public relations. So I was always very happy about that. Let's see. Then, I worked for Walsh for 18 years. We've lived in Hudson for 28 years. I can hardly believe it's been that long. But then it was time for a change, and an opportunity at Hattie Larlam opened up. And I'm working there now as the annual fund director. So what I do at Hattie is I raise money and awareness for people with developmental disabilities. And it's through Hattie Larlam that I found out about Hudson Rotary. I got a call one day from Nancy Pavlik. I don't know if any of you remember Nancy. She let me know that Hattie Larlam was going to be a beneficiary of the gala. And would I be willing to come to a meeting and talk about Hattie Larlam? So I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And I came, and I was struck that day with the friendliness, the camaraderie of all of you. And I also was very impressed with the support that this club gives to the Hudson community. There are several organizations that depend on the grants that we give them to get through the year. And there are students that we provide scholarships to that depend on that to get them through college. So, you know, our club has about, 50 members? So we're small but mighty here in this Hudson community. So I want to thank you all for everything that you do for Hudson. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roseanne. Thanks for the plug for Hudson Rotary. We have fortunate today to have our service learning team with us. So Lonnie and Jamie and their team.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to see all of you. The reason why we were not here last week is because we were on our 13th annual Appalachian Service Project in Adams and Brown County. So where we did everything from working at food pantries to delivering Meals on Wheels to working on cattle farms, goat farms, lavender farms, alpaca farms, you name it. So that's what we're doing last week. And also we've got 3 weeks of school left, and I just wanted to share with you some pretty amazing numbers. This year's class, so far to date, has earned over 15,000 hours of service in 1 year. And, thank you. And average for our 65 students, the average number that they earned was 232 hours of service in a year. So we're exceptionally proud of those numbers. And you'll be receiving an invitation shortly to attend our annual luncheon, which is going to be on May 18th at the high school at noon. And I've got two fantastic students here to talk to you today about their service. And the first one is going to be the lovely Annalise.
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about like my service site, some moments that I really just have stuck with me. And so my service site is a place called First Glance in Akron, and it's kind of a program for young moms or teen moms to go, and they can participate in classes, they have counseling, and there are just a lot of services that they provide for those moms. And I actually am looking after the kids. I'm in the nursery, which is kids ages 1 to 3, which can sometimes get a little hectic, but definitely my most memorable moment since January, since I started going there. There's my we're not supposed to have favorites, but my favorite little girl is named Talia, and every time she came in, she saw me, and she just broke out in this huge smile, and then she ran over and she hugged me, and she's been doing that every week since probably February. So I think, and then from that, I've learned just that it's definitely really important for underprivileged kids like that to have a positive role model in their lives and someone they can look up to, and that's a constant good person in their life. So, and I also wanted to just continue on with that to let you know that I will be planning on attending Ohio State University next year. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Hannah Miles, and I'm a senior at Hudson High School, and I've lived here for almost 10 years. So this year has been all about being outside of our comfort zone, and I had to remind myself of this when I was placed at my second semester site, Heritage of Hudson. I knew this site was a rehabilitation center and elderly home, but I did not know all the lessons, memories, and bonds that I would form. Sarah comes to mind when I think about Heritage of Hudson. Where do I even begin with her? The first couple of weeks we talked, all she would say is a simple good, yes, no, or even okay. But now we can talk for hours while I paint her nails. This has shown me that patience and consistency are needed to form a meaningful friendship. Before being placed at Heritage of Hudson, I knew I wanted to be a nurse, and this experience has reinforced this passion even more. I've been accepted into the pre-nursing program at Kent State University, and this has been an ambition of mine since I can remember. I could not imagine senior year without everyone involved in service learning, especially Ms. Banner. I could not think of a better program to prepare me for my next steps into the real world. Thank you.
I don't think I can follow that up very well. So what I will say is obviously great young women, but this is the second year I was able to go to Appalachia for the trip, and it's amazing what they are able to do. But also I think Lonnie deserves a huge shout out because it's like clockwork, and not just the way she works with people, but like this van needs to be here at this time and these kids need to be on this van. But by the way, there's a bus going there and another van going there, and it's really kind of crazy, but it's clockwork. So I know she gets a shout out a lot, but she definitely deserves another one here.
Any questions for either of the ladies before we wrap up?
No, but I have a question for you.
Okay.
Last year when we went down to Columbus, one of the representatives talked about you guys.
Yes.
From Brown County. Do you guys really do a prom?
Yes. So what we do down there is with the Ohio Veterans Home. Oh, sure. Would you like to talk about it?
Sure.
Please, that'd be great. We'll have Annalise talk about it. Please tell us about that.
So we go down to Ohio County Veterans Home just for one night, and it's kind of just like a way to get all of the veterans out and just talking, and we dance with them, and we just sit down and talk with them, and they go on and on. So we were there for I think an hour and a half, and I only was able to talk to 2 veterans because of how much they just wanted to share. So, but it was a really amazing experience, and you could just really tell that they really appreciated us being there.
Any other questions? Thanks, everyone.
Okay, just one more thing before our main speaker. We introduce our main speaker. You probably know that our club is a part of a cluster, and Rotary clubs are organized into clusters. There's 5 other clubs, including ours. It's the Hudson Clock Tower, Stowe, Cuyahoga Falls, and Northampton. And every year we have a cluster project, and this year our project was Students with a Goal, or SWAG. And this is an after-school program in Akron for inner-city kids. This program includes activities after school, dinner, study time, mentoring, and then a safe ride home for these kids. So our project was to purchase a van. The van that they had was literally falling apart. So with your help, actually with your help, with a donation of $1,200 from our club and a Rotary district grant that came from Rotary International down through the district, we were able to purchase this van. And this is a picture that was taken on Saturday up at the conference. The SWAG, which you can't see, well, it's on the front door. That's their logo. And then there's another photo, the second photo. That's the back of the van. So we will get continuous. If you're ever driving around downtown Akron in the inner city, you may see this van. Now, I just want to point out that these funds, that when you give to Rotary International, our EREY, Every Rotarian Every Year program, they take the Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation takes those funds. 50% of those funds, of which you give, go to the World Fund, and 50% come back to our district. So, and our district gets that money along with all the other clubs in our district, and we decide how we want to use those funds. So we can use those funds for a global grant, or we can use those funds for a district grant, which is one of the district grants that we use. So Rotary Foundation is one of the few foundations, worldwide foundations, where when you give money, you actually get it back for your own use. So just wanted to share that with you. It's a good story. Roseanne Drake, please introduce our speaker.
Okay, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Ron Regan. Ron is the News Channel 5's chief investigative reporter, and he's been at WEWS-TV for 18 years. He's had the honor of being the recipient of broadcasting's highest achievement for excellence with the George Foster Peabody Award for investigation into radiation poisoning among military veterans. In addition, he's been honored as Best Reporter in Ohio by the Ohio Associated Press, Ohio Society of Professional Journalists, and the Lower Great Lakes Emmy Awards with 18 Emmys. Ron's work over the years has freed an innocent man from prison, led to criminal convictions for others, and closed a nuclear power plant after revealing widespread construction defects. Ron has the most wonderful wife in the world. And I do know Flo, and she is pretty wonderful. And he has a 28-year-old son who continues to make them proud. So let's give him a warm Rotary welcome.
And I didn't pay her, but she is my neighbor. But I also found out that Hudson's best realtor is sitting right here in front of me, so we'll be talking after this. Sold a house in 3 hours, I think, in 20 minutes. It's a great honor to be here this morning in ways that you would be unaware of. But in 1970, one of the first recognitions I ever got was from a group in suburban Philadelphia who had a motto, and they invited me to their luncheon, and I was awarded a scholarship to college with their help, and I was sent off to a leadership camp that summer with their help. And the group's two of the key parts of that motto were, is it the truth, and is it fair to all? So I'm very grateful. I feel like I have a background with the Rotarians. It's been a part of my life, and so I'm grateful to be here this morning with you. I was born and raised in suburban Philadelphia. I'll keep the bio stuff short. Graduated from the Pennsylvania State University. Thank you very much, Buckeyes. And went to work for the Charleston, West Virginia Daily Mail. Worked in television, began in Huntington, and then moved on to several larger markets. But we have been here for the last 18 years. One of the interesting things, and I won't go into too many of these kind of anecdotal things, but with a name like mine, you can't do this for a living without getting into some kind of situations. And two of them very quickly. I covered Ronald Reagan in the '84 convention. Oh, actually, the '80. Which one was it? '80, I think. And we're staying at the Dallas. No, it was '84. Staying at the Anatole in Dallas. And one morning, I get the White House briefing pouch delivered to my room. Somebody at the White House lost their job, I think. Another time, we went to Washington as a family trip, and we're staying across the street at the hotel right across from Lafayette Park. And we get escorted up to our room, which I can assure you I checked to make sure it was the cheapest room in the hotel, because I can't roll like that. And we get in, and it's like a 6-room suite with a huge console with all set up with a hotline to the CIA, the FBI, the National Defense. It was crazy, stupid. And then someone arrives at the door with champagne and fruit. We had to clear that up immediately because I wasn't going to pay for this. But somehow, I don't know how these things happen, but that's the baggage sometimes you have. I was fortunate enough to meet him, though, and he really was a wonderful man. I don't know how you might feel about him, but he was a truly, truly wonderful, wonderful man.
Well, at least your name isn't Donald Trump.
Right. Yes. Well, we can get to that. I want to talk just briefly this morning. I'm going to leave time because I've always found when I've done this that leaving time for your questions has always been actually more illustrative than anything I could possibly say on my own. But there has been a radical transformation of the news industry in the 40 years that I've been doing this. When I began in this business, and I think some of you might be able to identify with this, I worked for a newspaper, and we had a morning and an afternoon paper, and that's long gone. I anchored a television newscast in Huntington, West Virginia, and we were able to be a #1 newscast, but at that time you had 3 stations in town. It was just 3. There wasn't anything else going on. In 1975, roughly, you had almost 50 million people watching the evening news. That figure's been cut in half. And over the last 20 years, we've seen the rise of cable news and cable news channels. And that has further kind of cut in to viewership. It's also, the benefit of that is that it's also given us many, many more options for our news. And so we're able to look and find things that we would not have found 20 years ago. But the playoff of that is, and if you, just for your own knowledge, the cable news channels, I think Fox has roughly in prime time, roughly between 8 and 11 o'clock, has about 2 million viewers average in the evening. And while the network newscasts have declined, those numbers are still substantial. The number one network news today gets about 8 million viewers for its 30-minute show. And even with the 2 million that cable gets in the evening, and I'm speaking of Fox here at this point, because they are by far the number one cable news operation, there's still roughly about 300,000 in that key demographic that you always hear talked about, adults 25 to 54. So 300 and some thousand, that's about the size of Cleveland. So it just kind of puts it into perspective a little bit about who's watching what. And while there has been this erosion, I think it is instructive just to kind of see where everything does fall out today. The largest by far development, though, and cable was a big shift, but social media now has become really where it's at. In our station, we feel that we're a leader in that, between our website, which is newsnet5.com, or our Facebook page, our Twitter feed. Everything that we do as a news organization is geared first and foremost to feeding social media. And again, that's a huge shift, because 40 years ago, if I had a breaking news story, I had a tip on something, I'd hold that story until the lead at 6 o'clock, because I don't want someone else to grab it and go with it. It's exactly the opposite today. As soon as I find something out, it's off on my Twitter feed immediately. It's up on Facebook. If we get an interview back, it's up on our website. So we no longer hold things, because the news environment now is so immediate. So it's been a huge, it's just been a huge shift in how news is produced, how it's packaged, how it's delivered. And I think it also, I think, has had some social implications, I think, in terms of how we as news users are viewing ourselves and the world and issues. I don't think there's any question about it. And I think to some extent, we could even look at today's political environment. I don't think it would be possible, and this is not making it, not being pejorative here, or making a kind of determination of any candidates, but I don't think that a Bernie Sanders candidacy could probably go from who is he to where he is today. And of course, as you know, all of his funding has come from his own website and social media efforts. So that kind of tells you a little bit of an insight into the power of social media and what it can do. And again, on the plus side, for candidates, they can get their message past us as filters and get it straight to you. You can get on the candidate's website and you can see what they have to say. And that's true for any organization. You know, the downside, I think, is this, that no matter where you are on the political spectrum, we tend, I think, I do, tend to move toward that outlet that most mirrors how I might feel about issues. I'm more comfortable there, and I think that they get me. I think that they understand me. The danger of that is that we tend to move ourselves away from other opportunities. And one of the wisest statements I ever heard was, we cannot simply watch one network news show or read the daily newspaper and hope to have a sense of what's really going on. And that is as true today as it was in 1968 when Walter Cronkite said that. In 1968, Cronkite was concerned about that issue. So what I would urge you to do, as painful as it is sometimes to watch some other newscasts or cable operations that are not, you know, in your zone, I think it is helpful to do it, to be able to see exactly where candidates are and where issues are. And I think you only benefit by by taking advantage of that. And again, that's one of the great pluses. 30 years ago, we didn't have it. 20 years ago, barely, we had that kind of diversity of voices. And today, mercifully, we do. And I think that can be a very good plus and robust for democracy. And the last thing I'll say before I take some questions is I do think that as we move forward, we've seen the plain dealer. How many still are getting it? I'll bet. Show of hands. Yeah, not too many. How many check a website in the morning or get on the web or any of this business right away? I mean, I remember when the 11 o'clock news, everyone stayed up for the 11 o'clock news because guys had to check a ball score, moms had to get the weather. We don't have to do that now. We can either A, jump on cable, or we can just jump onto the web real fast and pull the Weather Channel up or pull up ESPN, and we're done, and we're to bed. So there's a lot of issues there that relate to how viewers are shifting and how the newscasts are being impacted. But that said, I want to stop here for a minute because I do not want to drone on. So I want to take some questions and curiosities, things you've always worried about, wondered about, thought about. How do we operate? What do we do? So who wants to be brave and come forward with a question? Yes, yes. Oh. Oh, we need the mic. Gee,
okay.
Microphones are needed.
Can we hear me?
I do.
Okay, you said we should check different channels.
Yes.
Well, I've done that, and it seems like, let's say Fox News is on, CNN is on, they have the exact same things going on, maybe a minute apart.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, I could talk to someone else who would say that's not my experience. It is interesting. When I talk to viewers, there are going to be, to some extent, you're going to have a hierarchy of events. On any given news day, this morning, there isn't any question that the lead story everywhere, and will be all day, a really dramatic showing on the part of one candidate. It was a remarkable showing on the part of Donald Trump last night. So some of this is, I think a news evaluation that sure we make. But I think, I've talked to many people who have a different impression who will go, I won't watch that cable station because I find they're just lying, and they're, so. But I don't think there's any collusion. Let me get to the bottom line. There's no collusion. We're not calling each other up to. Yeah.
Competition.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, given what you said about the social media trend, do you think that trend and the popularity to campaign on social media has led or been a part of the unique election that we're having, or do you think it's just the candidates?
Well, analyzing this election year is something is above my pay grade, but I will say there's no question that each presidential cycle for the last 12 years have sort of indicated a real impact of social media, and that's just going to keep growing. I don't think anyone would disagree that the Sanders campaign would not be where it was without its grassroots social media effort, because simply no one knew who he was. It wasn't on anyone's radar screen, and he was able to use that pretty effectively. So you cannot underestimate the impact of social media today. Just can't.
I have a question about the impact of the instant, on behalf of the reporters, putting information on instantly in terms of accuracy. What kind of internal discipline do news media use to verify that what's being put onto the feed is in fact accurate?
Well, there's going to be there are a lot. I mean, contrary to what people might think, nothing we put on just goes on without some discussion. However, I think you might be referencing, maybe not, but there was a pretty serious dust-up with a CNN correspondent early on in the campaign, and I believe it had to do with Sanders, not Sanders. No. One of the candidates in the Midwest primary in Iowa, and packing up and leaving. And there was a report by a reporter who was told that he's leaving the state and going back to Florida. That got picked up and retweeted by the opposition as CNN's reporting that he's packing it and he's closing down the campaign, which wasn't exactly what they reported, but it got it led off to a chain reaction that caused quite a dust up. But you know, honestly though, to your point, this is a 24-hour news cycle. It's a 24-second news cycle. I mean, we all of those folks, particularly on political campaigns, are under an enormous amount of pressure to get on the air and to report. And so the burden is on us, and we have to be very, very mindful of this all the time, all the time.
I would like to ask your opinion about the condition of local TV news. And one of the reasons I don't watch it anymore is, number one, the number of minutes out of the half hour that is in advertising. And second, they spend more time telling you about what they're going to tell you about than they do telling you about. So in a typical 30-minute program, there might be 3 or 4 minutes of actual content.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just ruins the whole thing. I don't watch it anymore.
Sure. Yeah. And I hear this a lot, and I get it. It's frustrating. Here's how that breaks down. In a 30-minute newscast, whether that's the 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news, there is, in fact, only about, if you're lucky, a 10-minute news, 10 minutes of news. And the reason that is because you've got 3 minutes of weather, and you've got 3 or 4 minutes of sports. And then to your point, television stations, to stay in business, generally, I don't think these breaks have gotten any longer. In fact, in some cases, to retain viewers, I think some of the strategy is to go from a traditional 2-minute break. Generally, commercial breaks are 2 minutes long, if you've paid attention to that or noticed, to cutting that down to maybe 90 seconds. But so there are 4 breaks, though, in a news show. So you're taking out now 8 minutes for commercial time. So then, to your next point, the famous coming up next. And, you know, it's a way for stations to say, don't leave, that we've got something else coming. But it can be very frustrating to viewers, because what I generally hear is, well, if it's that important, why aren't you telling me right now? So, but it's the only way for us to effectively communicate to you, because we know you're busy. We know that you may be thinking, if it's 11 o'clock, you may be thinking, great, I've just heard the weather, or I heard the first segment of the news. It doesn't sound like there's anything really important coming on. That's why I think I'll go to bed. Actually, you might hear that with even the work that I do, because my role at the station as the investigative reporter is to do featured investigations that air in the 11 o'clock newscasts. And that is a battlefield for viewers. All the stations compete at 11 o'clock for viewers. And my work generally is going to appear at the beginning of the second segment, which is about 12 after 11. So they usually will put on the breaking news and news of the day first, and then say, well, here's what's coming up. So,
yeah. You mentioned it. It's on. You mentioned the Plain Dealer, and I've noticed, besides the fact that it's cut back its daily production, the Beacon Journal's getting thinner and thinner, and the economics, for me, are kind of looks like there's not going to be newspapers around, the next 10 years, maybe 20.
Well, I don't have the numbers exactly, but the number of layoffs over the last 10 years in the newspaper world are staggering. They're just staggering. And the amount of readjustment that newspapers have had to do over the last decade is staggering. They are shifting. They're all shifting to their websites. At some point, these will become pay sites. I'm pretty sure of that. I can't foresee long term that simple advertising and pop-ups on your website and banners are going to pay the freight. And we've seen that happen with a number of major publications. I think the Wall Street Journal, I think, is a paid subscription site now, if you want to go very deep into it. But stations, are struggling. The newspapers, that old model is gone. It's just gone. Print, the trucks, the Plain Dealers plant there off of 480 in Tiedemann. It just looks like a tomb. And it's nothing they're doing wrong. They are coping with the change in readership, and they know that they need to go where their viewers want them to go, and they want them to migrate onto the web. So, but it's a trend that's going to continue, and all the newspapers have gotten thinner, every one of them.
Ron, this is an inside baseball kind of question. Okay. In mid-July, you're going to have ABC and all the other networks move into Cleveland with a huge army of correspondents, producers, writers, and so forth. I'm just curious, how much collaboration will there be, say, in the case of Channel 5 with ABC, or will that be pretty much a separate operation?
I was asked that just recently. It's a very good question. Today, I'll rephrase it. Years ago, there had to be a lot of cooperation because we were really the broadcast center. We were where you needed to be if you wanted to get Peter Jennings or whoever was anchoring, get him on television. But with the advent of so much mobile technology now, honestly, the networks, I bet I could go the entire month of July and rarely see an ABC network person in our building. Because I think they will have massive trucks there. They'll have their own control rooms there. We all have our own studios that we're building there at the center. So probably not as much as some years ago. Probably not as much. I know that we're going to be staffing it mightily. We plan to expand coverage, expand newscasts, have specials at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be a very, very important event for us.
Next.
Yeah.
As an investigative reporter, what's your favorite report?
Thanks for the question. I have been very, very blessed in my career. I don't think that I could have ever have thought when I started that I would be able to do or achieve some of the things that I've been blessed enough to do. I think getting a young man out of prison, he was a young black man, he was convicted of murder. It was a murder he didn't commit. And we were able to report on that significantly and win him a new trial and then win his acquittal. So I think giving him his life back now, he works in Cleveland, he's doing well. That's a big thing. I think years ago, I joked that I was really just starting out. I was 28 and I was working in Louisville. And I joked that I peaked early. It's all been downhill since. I was very involved. If you remember in 1979, China Syndrome was a very, very popular movie. It was the nuclear industry was under fire, a lot of criticism. 3 Mile Island was leaking in Pennsylvania. And a nuclear plant was being built across the river from Louisville and about 30 miles north in Madison, Indiana. And I was fortunate enough to get enough information that found that there were serious construction defects. The plant was about 40% complete, but the defects were so severe that one of the documents indicated that a Nuclear Regulatory Commission inspector on site kicked his boot in the side of the containment wall, and a whole chunk of the containment wall fell out. So we reported on that for about a week solid, and the NRC issued a moratorium on construction. Then congressional hearings were held, and then finally the plant was shut down, and for good. In fact, a couple of years ago, it just sat there for decades, like a ghost town, and I think it was demolished a couple of years ago. But that was a pretty significant story, particularly when I was that young.
How do you find your stories, and how do you vet them? Because all day long in my job, people complain about someone says, "Oh, you should call one of the investigative reporters."
I mean, to be honest, I get a lot of tips, and we were talking a minute ago. You got to be careful, because everyone wants to use an investigative reporter, I say, as their bagman. They've got it in for somebody, and they want you to go out and do the hit for them. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to have, I think, always try to keep a very high level of ethics and skepticism. My guiding rule is always the story that I want to believe the most, it's the one I want to disbelieve the most, because it keeps me grounded. In the case of the radiation poisoning for veterans, that came to me because I had done an investigative report several years back on a phony charity that was masquerading as the Disabled American Veterans. They called themselves the Disabled Veterans of America. So if the Disabled Veterans of America calls you up at 7 o'clock at home and says, "Hey, can you contribute? These vets are great guys," every one of you is going to go, "Oh, sure, I know you guys. Yeah, I know who you are." Except they're not. They just switched the letters. And we found they're based over in Parma. And this woman was just using tens of thousands of dollars for her own benefit. Not a dime went to veterans. So it was a significant story, which the Real Disabled American Veterans Foundation gave me a recognition for. And then they knew me. And then several years later, a source there called me and said, "We're getting a lot of claims from veterans who served at a military post, at a naval base, and they all are reporting these cancers. And we believe that the number is far too high to be coincidental. And yet the Veterans Administration is ignoring it and not following through." So we pursued that, and that was a needle in a haystack, because we did have, the story came to the Disabled American Veterans through an Ohio military veteran who, on his deathbed, asked his wife, "Please find some investigative reporter who will look into this." And Charlie Swinney passed away, but his wife reached out, and we started connecting the dots all over the United States. So it was a lot of work, but it's freedom of information requests, it's documents. I'm very big on open records. And you may or may not be surprised to know how resistive our public agencies are to giving me open records, which is their obligation. You pay for this. These are your records. They're not mine, and they're not the agency's. And they have an obligation to turn them over. And sometimes it's remarkable how much fist fighting you have to do to get them. Anybody else?
Can you tell us what the future is going to hold for us?
No, I can tell you the future's going to hold for me real fast. I've got something Friday at 11 on this investigation into human trafficking in advance of the RNC. It's a major concern whenever Super Bowls or big conventions come into town. This nasty industry flourishes. and we're reporting on what's being done there and what the issues are. We're doing something very significant on domestic violence in May. It may surprise you to know that if you are a woman and you have been abused and you go and get a temporary protection order against your abuser, that abuser, your abuser, will be able to legally, anywhere in the United States, go out and buy a gun until that becomes a full protection order. And we find that to be a significant loophole and something that we want to try to urge state legislators to change. So there's a number of issues coming up for me, but as far as the future, like politics, never going there. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. So coming soon, Jim, drawing for the Rotabuck. But first, a word about our programs. Today concludes our program series on news and entertainment media. And next week, we begin our program series on parks and recreation. And our first speaker is Dan Rice, President and CEO of the Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition. So it should be another good month for our program series. I would like to thank our greeters today, Kelly Brennan and Jim Young, for the month of April. Our setup crew, Tom Page was here, John Hairston, Ron Barnhouse, and Hannah Miles. Thanks for doing the video. So now our Rotabuck drawing, we do have $14 for today, $310 as our payout.
Oh, wow, okay. I can't keep Roseanne, can I? All right, here we go. Yeah, I could.
Next week, good idea, yes. So half of you can don't have to listen. This is a white ticket, and the ticket number is 1562. 1562. It's Jim Hackney. See, and I get next week, in addition to our speaker, we will have a little program about mobile bidding. And we'll show some screens on how to do the mobile bidding so that when you get to the gala, you have your smartphone, you won't be overwhelmed. There's your $14.
Going in there?
Yep, it's in there. Nope.
There you go.
Okay, this concludes our meeting. Have a great day.